Florentino Pérez suddenly has a nightmare on his hands. Arsenal are reportedly trying to lure Vinicius Jr. away with a £400,000 a week offer. And with his contract talks already stalling, Real Madrid could be facing a fight to keep one of their biggest stars. Let's get into it. Here's where this stands right now. Arsenal are prepared to hand Vinicius Jr. a deal that would make him the highest paid player in the club's 140-year history. According to The Telegraph, Arsenal are prepared to offer Real Madrid attacker Vinicius Jr. the biggest contract in the history of the Emirates Stadium club, with Gunners manager Mikel Arteta wanting the 26-year-old at the North London club. Not a token approach, not a feeler. A genuine, board-approved offer built around one number: £400,000 a week. That figure matters because it's not arbitrary. It's the same amount Vinicius already earns in Madrid. Vinicius currently earns £400,000 per week at Madrid, and the Gunners are ready to improve those terms to lure him to Emirates. Arsenal aren't trying to match him. They're trying to beat what Real Madrid already pays. Their own player on his own turf in his own contract. That's the part that should worry anyone sitting in Perez's office. Break down the money and it gets sharper. For The Telegraph's Dominic King, Arsenal are prepared to offer him a salary of £400,000 per week. Around £20 million per season, approximately $27 million per season. Other outlets have the figure climbing even higher once bonuses and add-ons get factored in. One report is the same reporting chain claims Arsenal are prepared to make a significant financial commitment to sign Vinicius Jr. and are willing to offer him a club record salary of €470,000 per week, which would result in him becoming the highest paid player in the team. Whichever number you land on, the message from North London is identical. Money will not be the reason this deal doesn't happen, and Arsenal have been explicit about that. They have discussed the figures of what it would potentially take to get him, and finance will not be a barrier to their aims. That's a direct quote from inside the building. Josh Kroenk's ownership group isn't hedging. They've decided the wage structure they built around Bukayo Saka's £365,000 a week deal can be broken for the right player, and Vinicius is that player. Compare that Saka number for a second, because it tells you how big a jump this is. Both Mesut Ozil and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang were on £350,000 a week during their prime, while the new deal Bukayo Saka signed is said to be worth £365,000 a week. So Arsenal's own captain, their homegrown superstar who just helped end a 22-year title drought, isn't even the ceiling anymore. Vinicius Jr. is currently on £400,000 a week, while reports elsewhere have revealed that he has been demanding closer to £500,000 a week. To sign a new deal at Real Madrid, Arsenal know that number, and they're not blinking. The stance from the Emirates has been described in blunt terms by insiders. The report claims that the Premier League champions don't view Vinicius' salary as a hurdle at all, and are prepared to make him the highest paid player in their entire history. On top of that weekly figure, there's a transfer fee to consider too. Arsenal are ready to pay him in excess of £400,000 a week, on top of a transfer fee which is likely to exceed £100 million. Now here's why that's landing in Madrid like a grenade. Vinicius has spent months trying to get Real Madrid to move on his own deal, and Perez's side hasn't budged the way the player wanted. Suddenly, there's a Premier League champion parked outside the door, waving a bigger number, with zero hesitation about paying it. Mikel Arteta, after a statement attacking signing this summer, has earmarked Vinicius as the ideal profile to take his squad to the next level. And the Spanish tactician appears to have the full backing of those in the boardroom at the Emirates. That's not a rumor floated by an agent trying to force a pay rise. That's a manager and an ownership group aligned on a target, with the financing already mapped out. And it's arriving at the single worst moment for Real Madrid to be caught flat-footed, because Vinicius's contract is already ticking down. Winger Vinicius has of course seen his future in Spain's capital thrown into serious doubt over the last 48 hours, as the 26-year-old's Real Madrid contract terms continue to wind down. Arsenal didn't create the crack in the wall, they just found it, and now they're standing in it with a checkbook. To understand why this offer lands as hard as it does, you need to understand what Vinicius actually means to Real Madrid, and why Perez has spent years treating him as untouchable. He arrived from Flamengo back in 2018 for a fee that now looks like a footnote. It's true that the $51 million, €45 million, Madrid paid Flamengo for the teenager in 2018 has proven to be a bargain. Nobody in Madrid thought they were signing a generational winger at the time. He was raw, he was skinny, and for his first couple of seasons, the Bernabeu crowd treated him like a work in progress rather than a superstar. That changed fast. Over an 8-year tenure, Vinicius has won 2 Champions Leagues, scoring in both finals in 2022 and 2024, and 3 La Liga titles. He's also been the Ballon d'Or runner-up and the recipient of FIFA's The Best Award, amassing 128 goals across 376 appearances in the Spanish capital. Scoring in 2 separate Champions League finals isn't a stat line. That's the kind of thing that gets a player's number retired at most clubs. He didn't just play in Madrid's biggest nights, he decided them. That's exactly the language Pérez himself has used during his own re-election campaign. With boos from parts of the home crowd still ringing in the background, Pérez stood up for his winger without hesitation. Vini is one of the best players in the world, and he is delighted to be a Madrid player. Pérez said during his successful bid for re-election, he was decisive in winning the last 2 European Cups, and he has 1 year left on his contract. There is still time. But I tell you, Vinicius wants to stay at Madrid, and I want him to stay. That's about as close as Florentino Pérez gets to a public declaration of loyalty to a single player. But loyalty and a signed contract are 2 different things, and that's where the story turns. The renewal talks that were supposed to have wrapped up ages ago kept stalling. Mundo Deportivo suggested there's also some friction on the subject of a signing bonus, something the player wants but Real Madrid appear unwilling to grant. Many expected the situation to be resolved by now, but with no official announcement. The stalemate has mysteriously prolonged. The core issue was never really about respect. It was about a specific number sitting across the table from Pérez, month after month. The willingness to ink a new deal is there, but various reports indicate the soon-to-be 26-year-old wants to earn a salary that is at least in the neighborhood of what Kylian Mbappé is bringing in. And that comparison, more than anything else, is what's been poisoning these talks. Mbappé arrived at the Bernabeu on a free transfer and instantly became the highest earner in the building. That single fact rippled through the dressing room. Kylian Mbappe's arrival at Real Madrid has reportedly earned Jude Bellingham and Vinicius Jr. a €5 million wage increase apiece. Real Madrid tried to smooth things over quietly with a modest bump. It didn't close the gap, and Vinicius knew it. By the spring, the numbers being thrown around were stark. Vinicius Jr. currently earns €15 million net per season at Real Madrid. And according to Mundo Deportivo, the Brazilian is demanding the same wages as Kylian Mbappé before putting pen to paper on a contract, and Madrid's math wasn't matching his ask. While Mbappe's basic salary is €15 million net per season, after calculating his hefty signing bonus of €8 million per year, the total figure stands at €23 million per season. Los Blancos have refused to offer the same amount to Vinicius Jr., as it would mean offering almost a 50% hike. Pérez's resistance wasn't just about one player's pay packet. It was about protecting a wage structure he's guarded for 2 decades. The same structure that let him build multiple Galactico eras without the dressing room tearing itself apart over envy. If Vinicius gets Mbappé money, every other star in that squad wants to renegotiate too. That's the real reason talks kept freezing, deal after deal, meeting after meeting. And all the while, form on the pitch kept complicating the picture. There was a stretch where his output dipped. The 25-year-old attacker's performance significantly dropped in the 2024-25 campaign, as he scored only 22 goals in 58 matches across all competitions. His inconsistency in performance is also a major factor why Madrid are refusing to offer such a major pay hike. Suddenly, the club had cover for its stance. Why pay the club's second man Mbappé money when the numbers on the sheet don't always back it up? But performance is never static, and Pérez knew that gamble cut both ways. If Vinicius rediscovered his level and the contract still wasn't sorted, Madrid would be negotiating from a position of weakness, not strength. That's exactly the trap that was quietly being set while everyone assumed this was a simple pay dispute. Just as the Vinicius situation looked like it might drift into another summer of stalemate, Real Madrid changed managers, and that single decision reshaped everything about how this saga was going to play out. José Mourinho's return to the Bernabeu dugout wasn't just a coaching appointment. It was a signal about what kind of squad Pérez wanted built around, and Vinicius was immediately positioned as one of the untouchables. Mbappé, Bellingham, and Vinicius are the pillars that José Mourinho wants to hold his team together, and Arsenal may have to find another marquee signing this summer. That's not ambiguous language from a manager hedging his bets. That's Mourinho drawing a line in the sand. Before Arsenal had even made their move public, and Mourinho didn't stop at private preference. He took it straight to ownership. The Telegraph have revealed that returning Madrid boss Mourinho has decided he wants to keep Vinicius, even though exit speculation surrounding the Brazilian superstar is ramping up. For a manager known throughout his career for making brutal, unsentimental calls on which players stay and which get moved on, that's a strong hand to play this early into his second spell in Madrid. It got more direct than that. According to multiple outlets citing the same Telegraph reporting, Mourinho went to the hierarchy with a number attached. Jose Mourinho will oppose Real Madrid selling Vinicius Jr. to Arsenal even if the Gunners offer a club record fee of €160 million, according to a report. Not let's think about it, not depends on the fee. A flat no regardless of what Arsenal put on the table. That stance has been echoed elsewhere in the Spanish and English press using near-identical language. Arsenal's ambitious pursuit of Real Madrid superstar Vinicius Jr. has hit a significant roadblock, following the return of Jose Mourinho to the Bernabeu dugout. While the Premier League champions are eager to bring the Brazilian to North London, the legendary Portuguese manager has reportedly issued a definitive stance on the forward's future, informing Real Madrid's hierarchy that Vinicius Jr. is not for sale. But here's what makes this more complicated than a simple manager backs his player story. Mourinho and Vinicius don't have a spotless relationship. There's history there that Pérez has to manage alongside everything else. Even so, the Portuguese coach wants the Brazilian to remain in Madrid, despite questions over their relationship following last season's Gianluca Prestiani row. That's Mourinho choosing the team's interest over any personal friction, which tells you how highly the club values the winger regardless of who's clashed with whom in the past. So now Pérez has two pressures pulling in different directions. His manager wants Vinicius kept at almost any cost. His own finance department is still resisting the wage jump that would actually secure him. And sitting in the middle of that tension is Arsenal, watching every headline, ready to pounce the second the gap between those two positions doesn't close. Real Madrid's response wasn't to panic publicly, it was to try and control the exit price if things did fall apart, with Arsenal monitoring the situation. Closely following their recent Premier League glory, Florentino Pérez has established a firm financial threshold that any suitor must meet to land the superstar winger. According to Sport, that threshold wasn't modest. The Spanish giants are understood to be demanding a total package worth €160 million, including fixed fees and performance-related variables, to even consider parting ways. With their star winger, this set figure is designed to deter opportunistic buyers and reflect the 26-year-old's status as one of the premier talents in world football. That's the classic Pérez move. If you can't stop the conversation from happening, set the price so high that it makes the buyer flinch. Except Arsenal so far haven't flinched. They've already discussed the finances internally and decided the fee isn't the obstacle, it's the wage, and on that front, they're offering more than Madrid currently pays. Real Madrid weren't sitting idle either. Behind the scenes, they lined up a possible like-for-like replacement in case the wage standoff finally broke the wrong way. It emerged on Friday night that Madrid have entered the race for RB Leipzig sensation Yan Diamond, who could replace Vinicius at the Bernabeu. That's not a club bluffing. That's a club quietly building a contingency plan while publicly insisting their star isn't going anywhere. Some in the Spanish press even floated the idea that the timing of Diamond's arrival would work in Arsenal's favor rather than against it. It was widely believed that the arrival of Yan Diamond at the Santiago Bernabeu would work in favor of Arsenal's decision to pursue Vinicius Jr. since Real Madrid got a speedy winger who is technically brilliant to replace Vinicius, and the potential arrival of Rodri and Diamond would require the La Liga side to offload more players to balance its finances, with Vinny's exit solving the monetary questions once and for all, as his sale could attract at least €160 million. So even inside Madrid's own logic, there was a version of events where letting Vinicius go actually made financial sense. That's the crack Pérez has been trying to paper over ever since Arsenal's number went public. Every time he insists the winger stays, there's a spreadsheet somewhere in the building making the opposite argument. Every negotiation like this has a deadline hiding inside it, and for Real Madrid, that deadline has been getting louder by the month. Vinicius's contract runs out in the summer of 2027, and the closer that date gets, the less leverage Pérez actually has at the table. The mechanics of it are simple and brutal. Real Madrid superstar Vinicius Jr. is entering the final year of his contract, set to expire in June 2027. This means he could negotiate with other clubs by January 2027 and leave for free the following summer, a move that would shock soccer. once that January window opens. Pérez isn't negotiating from strength anymore. He's negotiating against the very real possibility of losing his best attacker for nothing. That risk has been spelled out plainly by people close to the situation. The last thing Los Blancos want is for the 2026-27 season Vinicius Jr.'s contract extension unresolved. In this scenario, the Brazilian would be able to start negotiating with other clubs, with the possibility to leave Real Madrid as a free agent next summer, with Los Blancos losing one of the world's best players without receiving a dime. Every week this drags on without a signature is a week closer to that nightmare scenario for Pérez, and it's not like Real Madrid have been passive in the transfer market while all this plays out. They've been busy building around the uncertainty rather than resolving it. Real Madrid have been significantly active during the start of the summer transfer window, having already acquired Marc Cucurella, Ibrahima Konate, Bernardo Silva and Denzel Dumfries to bolster the start of Jose Mourinho's second stint at Madrid's White House. All that spending and still no ink on the one contract that arguably matters most to the club's long-term identity. Pérez himself hasn't exactly closed the door on a departure either, which is its own kind of tell. In one interview, he was strikingly hands-off about it. In an interview with El País, Pérez made it clear that Real Madrid will not stand in the way of Vinicius Jr. should the attacker decide to pursue a new challenge elsewhere, with contract negotiations currently moving at a slow pace. That's not the language of a president fighting to keep his guy. That's a president leaving himself an exit ramp just in case the money fight never gets resolved. Reports through the spring painted the same picture. Over and over, talks stuck, positions dug in, no white smoke. Contract talks with Vinicius representatives failed to advance significantly over the past 12 months, with the 25-year-old keen to be offered the highest annual salary in the Real Madrid squad, a request that Pérez has been reluctant to sanction, and as a result, the former Flamengo winger has been tipped to depart Los Blancos this summer unless a resolution can be agreed. There was a brief window where the temperature dropped. A managerial change and a run of form seemed to calm things. Rumors of an exit have died down following the departure of Xabi Alonso, with whom Vinicius endured a tricky relationship, and the Brazilian has now rediscovered his best form under interim boss Alvaro Arbeloa. For a moment it looked like Pérez had bought himself time without even having to move the number. Vinicius himself, in public at least, kept insisting there was no rush and no drama. Back in January, he told reporters directly that he saw his future at the club. Speaking to reporters, the Brazil international admitted, "I want to stay here for a long time. There's also a lot of talk about my contract renewal because I have another year left. We're very relaxed about it. I trust Florentino Pérez and he trusts me." Warm words. But warm words don't sign contracts, and months later the wage gap was still sitting there unmoved. By the middle of the year after the World Cup break, both camps sat back down and the numbers on the table were finally made public in detail. Spanish reporter Abraham Romero said, "My information is that Real Madrid are standing firm on the position they held before the World Cup. Prior to the tournament, Madrid's offer stood at 20 million euros net per season, whereas Vinicius was earning around 17 million euros. On the other hand, Vinicius wanted at the time a figure closer to 30 million euros, a 10 million euro canyon sitting in the middle of every meeting Pérez has taken all year. Rock Nation, representing Vinicius, added another wrinkle that made the gap even harder to close. The report states that Rock Nation is requesting a 15 million euros loyalty bonus if the winger fulfills the entirety of his next contract with the Spanish club, and Vinicius camp wants his salary to approach that of Kylian Mbappé. A bonus like that had never existed in Madrid's pay structure before, which is exactly why Pérez, according to reporting, has stayed firm against it. Club president Florentino Pérez is equally determined to protect the team's wage structure, and according to Sport, Real Madrid considers the current financial demands excessive and has maintained a firm position throughout the negotiations. That's the tightrope Pérez has been walking for the better part of a year. Protect the wage structure that's kept his dressing room stable without losing the one player who's decided 2 Champions League finals, all while a Premier League champion sits outside offering more money than Madrid themselves currently pay. So where does all this actually leave things, with Arsenal's number now sitting in plain view and Pérez's negotiating room shrinking by the week? The most recent reporting suggests Real Madrid haven't shifted much from their original position, even with Arsenal's offer now public knowledge. Ramero's. Read on the room was that the club expects the relationship to survive, even if it takes an uncomfortable meeting to get there. My expectation is that at this meeting, Florentino will present him with the same offer that has been on the table up until now. Vinicius might say, "Look, President, I want this and that," and I think they might find some common ground, perhaps with a minimal renewal bonus. I think Real Madrid will stick to their original terms, and my gut feeling is that the player will ultimately renew with Madrid. And there's a real argument for why that prediction could hold. Vinicius now has actual numbers to compare, not hypotheticals, and even Arsenal's record-breaking offer comes with its own complications. Once you look past the headline figure, Vinicius has tested his market value and discovered it is high, but of the actual offers he has on the table right now, none match the overall sporting and financial scale of Real Madrid's proposal. Part of that complication is tax. On paper, £400,000 a week sounds like a straightforward upgrade. In practice, the picture is messier. That £400,000 a week adds up to £20.8 million a year, but after UK tax and national insurance, the take-home pay drops to about £11 million, which is still well below the £14.7 million Vinicius reportedly takes home at Madrid. That's a genuine hole in the deal that Arsenal would have to fill somehow if they wanted this to actually feel like a pay rise rather than a pay cut with better PR to truly match what he's pocketing in Spain. The raw numbers would have to climb even further. If Arsenal wanted to match that £14.7 million take home purely through salary, they'd need to pay around £27.7 million a year, roughly £533,000 a week before tax, and that's before you even add in employer costs on Arsenal's side of the ledger. On the salary-only estimate of £27.7 million, Arsenal's employer contribution would be approximately £4.15 million per season, meaning the direct payroll cost could be close to £32 million a year before bonuses, signing-on fees, agent costs, or commercial payments are even factored in. None of that kills the deal. It just means the headline number everyone's been repeating isn't necessarily the number that gets a deal over the line. Arsenal know this. Their own financial people have already run these figures, which is presumably why talk has crept toward even higher weekly totals in more recent reporting. Meanwhile, Mourinho's resistance hasn't softened. If anything, the noise around Diamand's arrival has hardened positions rather than opened doors, with Madrid publicly framing any incoming winger as a squad addition rather than a Vinicius replacement, and Pérez, for all his public warmth toward the player, still hasn't put pen to a deal that closes the gap Vinicius's camp has been pushing for since talks began well over a year ago. That's the story as it stands. A Brazilian winger who scored in 2 Champions League finals, sitting on the final stretch of his contract. A club president who's called him one of the best in the world but hasn't matched that praise with a check. A Premier League champion parked outside the Bernabeu with a wage offer that already beats what Madrid currently pay, and a manager inside the building drawing a line that says he's not for sale at any price. Somewhere in between all of that, Florentino Pérez has to make a decision, and every week he doesn't, the number outside the door only gets harder to ignore. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.